things don't happen fast. Market share doesn't happen quickly. Careers, generally speaking, take time to build. And I think as a young person in the industry early on, I've made mistakes because I was too impatient and forced things too quickly. And that's something that I wish I had known a bit earlier.
You're listening to Elevate, the official podcast of Elite Agent for real estate industry sales professionals, property managers and leaders. With thanks to our partner Connect Now, Elevate brings you the best tools, thinking and strategies to elevate your results. To get access to all of Elite Agent's premium resources, including a detailed episode guide for this podcast, visit joineliteagent.com. And for more information about how Connect Now can make moving easier on your clients, visit connectnow.com.au. Here is your host, Samantha McLean.
Welcome to another episode of the Elevate podcast, where we delve into some of the most interesting minds in business and in real estate for the very best tips and strategies for you to implement to elevate your business. I'm Samantha McLean, editor of Elite Agent and host of today's show. My guest today is the managing director of the Ray White Group, Dan White. So Dan, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Samantha. Great to be with you.
Thank you for being with us, actually, because I know you're based in Sydney, aren't you? And Sydney's in the middle of a pretty big lockdown at the moment. So how are you personally adjusting to that at the moment?
Yeah, it's certainly been, it's come on quickly. And I think when it first started to slow down a few weeks ago, we thought we'd get back out of it like we have done in the last few scares. But certainly, everything's really slowed up, obviously. Not getting into the office, working from home. But yeah, we've learned a lot from the first time. We've certainly ready for this, and our members are reacting really well. So we're very fortunate. We can still do one-on-one inspections in Sydney. So it is keeping us active. Obviously, always observing the spirit of the regulations and making sure we're safe. But we can still do things, which is great.
And there's still a fair bit of activity around the country as well in terms of auctions and things like that. What have you seen within Ray White in the last couple of months?
Yeah, I think we were looking at this morning very closely. Our auction figures, as you point out, are really always a litmus test, I think, of the market. And our numbers are looking like we had a really big auction a couple of weeks ago, but now with Melbourne and Adelaide now no longer to do auctions the next little while, we're looking at our numbers looking down about 35% coming into August, into the later part of January into August. So a decent dip, but certainly not a bigger drop as last time. And there's so much more confidence in the digital auction method than before. So while we expect a dip, we don't see it being as drastic as round one. And that's a great thing.
And speaking of auctions, your father, Brian, sold the family home up here in Ascot. So it must feel a bit like the end of an era.
It is. It's a big thing for the family. It's a beautiful old home where myself and my brother's fortunate to grow up. But it's a big old Queenslander, and it required so much love and attention. And after 20 years not living in the city, it came a time where it needed to change hands. So I think we always say as a family, it's great to be a vendor and to realise, put ourselves in the shoes of our customers. And my father and mother went through that process recently and always learned a lot from it. But the guys that looked after it for us, Matt and Dwight, did an amazing job, and great result for them.
Were they nervous at all?
Always, yeah.
It's a big responsibility.
Well, I think Matt and Dwight, they're pros, but yeah, I think even they admit that they were a little bit nervous, but they did an amazing job. And my mother's pretty particular, and she's raving about the whole process, so that's a good sign, and good for me too. The family's happy, yeah.
Speaking of family, I mean, the White family is I would think one of the true family dynasties in real estate, in not just in Australia but in the world. And we were lucky enough a couple of years ago to go and interview both Brian and Paul at the Shed.
I remember.
Yeah. Do you guys how big a role does the Shed play in the Ray White business now? And do you ever get back there yourself anymore?
Yeah, I was there in May, a couple of months ago. We opened our company corporate conference from the Shed at Crow's Nest. So we do go back there a lot. It's, as you know, it's just a shed in regional, very, very remote part of Queensland. It's important to go back. It reminds us of our humble beginnings, that, what great things can come from hard work and just a simple idea. And it keeps the generations of our family connected, 4 generations over 120 years. So the Shed is very important for me personally. I find it, you get a great sense of custodianship when you're there, and the family's role in the group. But just as importantly, it's for all our members to share. We have in the book, as you were noted in the shed, the names of all our elite members and chairman elite members are in the shed. Their contribution to the company is as much as anyone. So it's a great chance for us to recognise the people that have made the business what it is today. So yeah, it's a very special place. And Brian jokes about it's the most valuable asset the family has. When he said it 20 years ago, I thought he was crazy, but I think he might be right. It is very special.
It does feel, when you walk into the shed, it feels very, very, you almost feel like the spirit of Ray hanging around.
Yeah,
pretty sure.
You do. I think it's because it's a quiet place and it is a beautiful place as well. It's a chance to reflect on a lot of things. And I think that the walls do talk there. You can feel the past. You can, we say that a lot of businesses struggle to identify who they are, what they stand for. There's people get consultants to come in and help them workshop answers to that question and come up with a catchy cry about what they are and what they stand for. But the great thing about our group is we do have something that, we go back there, we can bang on the door and realise that this is really where we've come from. And it's very humbling thing to go through, and we're very fortunate to have it. I hope it stands there for a very long time to come.
Yeah, we're going to get into the leadership diary shortly, but speaking of dynasties, I mean, you're a fourth generation, I think, if my maths is correct.
Correct.
And you took over the group managing director position in the year 2000. How did you and Brian and the rest of the family approach that transition? Because succession planning is tricky at the best of times. So.
Yeah, it is tricky. I think. We've been fortunate. My brothers and I, joining the family group, were given opportunities to build something of our own inside the family business, and we've all done different things under that and outside of Ray White. But then I just worked more and more inside the Ray White business as my career developed. In our business called White and Partners, which I started, and it wasn't an event, Samantha. It was more of a gradual process. There was no announcement, there was no family meeting, there was no debate or crisis or sort of power struggle. It was, my brothers are very successful in what they're doing, and Brian was comfortable with the way the business was going, and it just gradually happened without a big discussion. And I don't even know how the title came up, to be fair. And it's been a lovely process. But having said that, my father obviously very involved in the business and loves it, and still lives it and breathes it, and very fortunate to be doing along him. We don't want big on titles, and while I might have a title there, he continues his key role in the business.
There's been a lot going on for Ray White in the last 12 months or so, particularly with one of our favourite people joining the business, which is Nerida Conisbee. What a fantastic resource. Can you tell us a bit about her appointment and what you hope to achieve having such a great economist working there within Ray White?
Yeah, I'd love to. So for a long time, like a lot of businesses in the real estate industry, we've obviously digitised a lot of our business, and information flow and data has become critical to us to give us a better feel of what's happening. And, having all the group on the same system and having a strong team to manage that information and present it. And last year, during COVID, there was a lot of talk that the market was about to finish and nothing was going to sell and the prices were going to fall 40% or whatever all the economists were saying, or all the banks were saying. And that data was showing something different, and we really believed that there was an underlying strength to the buyer market. And we were out there in the press. We got some amazing PR team. Alex Tilbury, leads that. And we just realised that we were missing a skill set in our team to be able to take that information and communicate it back to the press, but also to our customers, to help them make the best decisions and best answers. And I was trying to do it, and some other guys in the team were trying to express it. And we realised we had an opportunity for someone with real experience to be able to look at the information we had and give information back to our customers. And Nerida was obviously the number 1, 2, and 3 pick that we thought of. She's had some agency background experience. I worked in agency groups, and we really enjoyed getting to know her. And fortunately, she agreed to come on. So it's been great. She's it's all about, data is one thing, but actually using it and actually having better conversations is the real test. And her role in doing that, we think will be fantastic and great for our members and great for our customers.
Yeah, she's one of the only economists. Well, there's a few of them out there, but she has this knack of making the numbers interesting and dare I say, user friendly. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and she communicates very clearly, and can break it down into the so what question. She knows what numbers are important and why, and she does that very well. So and she works well with our network already and the media. So yeah, it's been a fantastic addition.
Speaking of high profile people, Gavin Rubinstein is a bit of a character, and he's out there at the moment as one of Amazon Prime stars of Lux Listing Sydney. Have you watched the show?
I have. I've watched the show. I haven't watched a whole lot. I watched. I think I'm up to episode 3 or so. So yeah, I was obviously Gav well. He's been looking forward to this being released. I think lockdown's been good for ratings as well for him. Everyone seems to be listening to it. So he's very, obviously put a lot of work into that, and good on him for chasing what he wants to do. It's a pretty intense schedule, I think they film, and they put a lot of work into this over the last few years. So yeah.
Yeah, you can tell. Is there?
Yeah.
We ended on a cliffhanger. I don't want to give it. If you haven't watched the show, this could be a spoiler
I know
alert.
all about the ending. Yeah,
but can you tell us? Was it Brian?
Well, it was the call itself. It was just one of us. I think it was part of the mystery. So that was how the show ended. And I know Gav says he's been contacted a lot by people asking what we want, what the family was after. So you might need to wait to season 2 to see what happens, Samantha. But yeah, they certainly add a little bit of intrigue to that. So we'll see how we go.
They've managed to end every episode on a cliffhanger, even though they dropped all 6 episodes at once. So I'm not sure about the strategy there, but anyway, have been enjoying it. Yeah. So moving along, as I mentioned, I'd like to ask you some questions as part of something we do called the Leadership Diaries, which we featured a lot of Ray White people, Mark McLeod and Megan Jaffe and people like that. And it's just a series of questions that we ask, experienced leaders to help future leaders with their careers. So, and I know you haven't seen these questions, so are you ready?
Yep. Yeah, go for it. Please.
Okay. So what was your first job and what did it teach you?
My first job was probably a full-time job, I suppose, was after university, where I worked in Arthur Andersen, an accounting firm. And it taught me, it was an amazing firm that really was so well centered on its team and staff, and the welcome that they gave the first year cohort, the way they educated us, the way they looked after us and kept us together and measured our performance and mentored us was something I've never ever seen again. And I had a wonderful leader who also, when I said I wanted to move on to something better, I was very nervous to tell him, and he said, "Where would you like to go? How can I help you get there?" was his response. And it was very, never forget that, the quality leadership that comes from bringing people through. And even if they then want to move somewhere else, they're there to support you do that. So, yeah, that was part of my favourite time of my professional career was working at Arthur Andersen in Brisbane. It was amazing.
Yeah, what an amazing leadership lesson to learn early on too.
Yeah.
Because it's normally not until 20 years down the track that we get that one.
Yeah, no, I was very fortunate to have that, and I do write to him now and again and remind him of that. What he provided me as an individual. So, yeah, very very fortunate I had that early experience.
Yeah, amazing. What's the most important thing you're working on now, and how are you making that happen?
Improving the effectiveness of our team, a corporate team, to work together. We have such a even the last 10 years, the diversity of our team in skills and background and experience and outlook is so different. With so many more people, as the team's grown, we've added more skills, more specialists. We have more specialists in our corporate team than we've had before. IT people, digital people, guys involved in profitability, guys involved in marketing, and all the traditional real estate stuff around options and growth. And trying to make everyone feel like they're part of the same, they belong in this company, that even though they're very different from the person across the aisle, that they still have a big role to play, and that they feel that even if you're in technology, that you feel you can be with Ray White and it's a great place to grow a career in technology. Or I'm in social media, it's a great place to grow a career. Or, in digital programming or data engineering or data science. And that's the biggest challenge, I think, in probably all companies, is making everyone feel that they do belong there and they can make a difference, and their input will be valued, even though it's a very diverse group of people.
What does the first hour of your day look like, and how does it go after that? Are you like a 5 a.m. clubber, or?
I'm not. I'm definitely not like some of you people who've been on, like, you guys you mentioned before, to get up super early. I am an early riser. I do have to start the day with some exercise, so I'm very fortunate with that. I've got some friends and a guy I train with a fair bit. So my 6 to 7 is pretty locked in every day with the same sort of thing. And then we have a family call every 3 days a week for half an hour. My father, my brothers, and our family CFO, and we talk for half an hour. It started during COVID, and it's kept up for the last 18 months. Often you sit there and there's silence, there's no one talking because there's not much to talk about, and there's no agenda, there's no formality, there's just us talking. So that's really me as gets the day underway, and it's a nice balance.
Who are the 3 people who've been most influential to you along your career?
Can I count family on that, or probably is that a bit probably
not? Yeah, absolutely you can. Okay, I think you definitely can.
Okay. Well, I'm fortunate to. I mentioned before the guy who worked with in Brisbane, Richard Friend from Arthur Anderson, was definitely one. I mentioned his story. My brothers have been special to me. I remember my brother Sam. He was working in the business already, and I wasn't sure when I would join the family business, because I was a bit concerned about whether I had enough experience and whether I'd be any good or make a difference in the family business. And he gave me the encouragement and said, "You don't need to be. You don't need to be a genius to join. You don't need to have all the answers before you join." I think was his comment, and that gave me the clarity to realise, I don't need to have all the answers before I join a family business. I can just join. That was a big. So my brothers have been big supporters of mine. And hopefully the other way as well. And then obviously, my father's been a biggest influence, obviously, in my career. Probably not for what he's done, but what he hasn't done, in the sense that he hasn't. He's always given me the opportunity to try my own thing. Always there to support, never telling me what to do, but supporting me in what I tried. So it's a good leadership lesson, I think, for all of us. And I sort of learned it without knowing I was learning it, that he very infrequently ever. People say to me often, "Oh, you must be struggling with that issue. What does Brian say? What does he tell you to do?" And yeah, I've been saying that for a long time, and the answer's always been, he's never ever told me what to do. He's always asked me questions and maybe, threw a few questions that I hadn't thought of. But he's always let me and my brothers sort of make decisions and move forward. If we made mistakes, he'd be there to help get out of it. So, yeah, they're the people I look back on that had a huge impact. I'm also very fortunate. I had a great career at Macquarie Bank, and I worked with someone there directly who I'm very good friends with, and actually work together in White and Partners, James Hodgkinson, and his influence on my career has been massive as well. Gave me a huge amount of confidence in my ability, and he was a huge support for me. So I've been very fortunate. It's a great question. I often say to people, it's good to look back who supported you, and there are a lot of people we all have in our lives that we should recognise more often.
It's interesting, and I mean, my next question, I suppose, is even more interesting, because we normally sort of say to people, who are you learning from right now? And even me, I looked back at this question, thought this is going to be so difficult for Dan to answer, because I know education is such a focus for the group. I mean, I've been to a couple of sessions where you've had Harvard professors come out, and I know Brian, without COVID, would go back to Harvard and study, and it's such a big focus. But I'm going to ask it anyway. Who are you learning from right now?
Well, I think I learn from a lot of sources. I think you say I've always been fortunate, being around a real company with a big learning bias, and always been made a big effort to be educated, or parents did for all of us, and then there's always been that sort of environment where in the family of education and learning. I think there's a couple of ways the benefit of being in a big group is that you do get so many wonderful people you meet and come across. And my grandfather used to say, if you stop and listen, everyone's got a good story. Everyone's got a story you should listen to. So there's a couple of things come to mind, Samantha. One is our young business owners, guys certainly younger than I am. Some of the guys and girls in that space and what they're doing with their businesses is astonishing. And I think that I'm constantly amazed at the level of leadership and skills coming from young business leaders inside the company. I'm sure there's obviously heaps of them outside Ray White as well, but inside our group, absolutely. I learned so much from being with them and seeing them operate at levels that I haven't seen before, embracing technology, just changing the approach about the way the industry works, being transparent with customers. And it is amazing. Some of our wonderful leaders coming through. Unfortunately, we've got a technology team. I learned so much from our tech team about how they approach it. They have such a different way of doing business than I've done before. With our CTO, Matt Gay, is always throwing books at me and ideas to read. Some of them are a bit beyond the pay grade, but some I can handle. And then finally, I do get benefit of being a part of a broader business too. My brothers are in different parts. Sam leads a business called Loan Market, which is a very big finance business, which is incredible success for him and learning from in that industry. And the younger brother Ben is in a technology business called ALO, which he's developed. So I'm surrounded, to be fair, by incredible people. The trick is to keep up with them all. I keep saying that to our top leaders. You mentioned before the call, people like Megan. There's so much to learn just inside our group. It's very fortunate to be part of that.
Yeah. What is your favourite question to ask someone in a job interview, and what does it tell you about the person? One question I often ask, if it's the right thing, if I don't want to stray in the wrong area, I often ask, growing up around the kitchen table, what did your family, can you describe what that was like? And what did you talk about as a young person with your broader family? If it's the right thing, if I know enough about them, because I think it gives a great level. It takes usually it takes people away from selling themselves and to just be talking about their past and where they've come from and what's important to them, and gives them talking about something they generally love or to reminisce about. So yeah, that's one question I often throw in there, which often I can't believe the funny looks back at me, but it's always one that works really well. And culture is so important these days. When you do bring somebody new into the business, what's the best way to help them understand the culture of Ray White and the family business?
It's such an important question. I think it's something that we probably don't do like all business probably don't do as well as we should. I think a family business that has been around a long time has got strengths and weaknesses, and it's something can be a hard business for new people to come into, because it's got, I think, a fairly strong culture and a long way of doing things informally. So we're a very informal business. We're not a board meeting style business. We don't even have an organisational chart really. It's very informal, and we like people to really back themselves to have an impact on the company rather than the company telling them what to do. And that just comes through conversations, and there's no shortcuts to having those things. We've got books and things like that, but people just have to spend time with people. Brian plays a really important role in that, his own style, and he loves, as he says, personalising the business, trying to explain the subtleties of an environment where it's us backing you, not us telling you what to do. And that's one of the art forms of all leadership, and there's no shortcuts in that process. And we can't be doing it as leaders. We can't be doing enough of it. Often you get people on, you're so excited they start, and then you stop talking. It's a danger area. It's a good question. After this session, I'll go and revisit some of that stuff. You've got me thinking again.
Well, I guess that's a good thing. When it's like you just said about your father, he asks good questions to get people thinking. So hopefully that's what this is.
Right.
What's one thing you wish you'd known when you first started your career in real estate?
One thing I wish I'd have known. I wish I knew that you could be more patient and you could the things in this industry take time to build. Things don't happen fast. Market share doesn't happen quickly. Careers, generally speaking, take time to build. And I think as a young person in the industry early on, I've made mistakes because I was too impatient and forced things too quickly. And that's something that I wish I had known a bit earlier. And maybe there was a pressure trying to come into a family business, trying to make an impact or whatever it is. But I think it's one of the great things about the industry, but it's also one of the worst things. It does things. The deck chairs take a long time to move around.
Yeah. One thing that I remember very clearly from my visit to the shed is I asked both Paul and Brian what advice they would have for agents who are doing it tough, or what advice Ray might have had. And I very clearly remember Paul saying, my father said that you put your hat on and you walk up and down Queen Street and you talk to people. And, I've never forgotten that little snippet because, he actually had the hat and all the rest of it. And I, still get goosebumps thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
What words of advice do you have for agents that might be starting out in this crazy market where it sort of feels like listings are a bit low and, times are a bit tough out there and there's 2 buyers for every property, or 20 buyers for every property?
20 buyers yeah. I think for young people, I think firstly, the youth, young people have never had a better opportunity in the industry. It's becoming more and more opportunities for young people because of the way the industry's gone and the way information flows and the way it's much more transparent. So I think the encouragement to young people to join younger makes a lot of sense. So I think firstly, it is an industry. It should be an industry of choice for a lot of young people because they can make an impact quickly as a young person. In terms of being effective, I just feel like my story early on. I think you've got to skirt a line. I'd do anything to work with the best people, and just take your time, be patient, under working for someone that you respect, that's a good leader, and you got the great thing about youth, time's on your side, and why rush? You're way better off spending time with great operators with good leadership skills, even if it doesn't mean much financially and doesn't mean you're going to be able to sort of show much financial rewards or public sort of accolades for stuff. But learning good habits from really good people at a young age is so important, I think, for the long term. And doing whatever you can to work for that person and working as hard as you can for them once you get that opportunity. And if it's not working out, finding someone else. If they're not as a good leader as you thought as they promised they were, then move on. Find someone that is.
Yeah. So we love to leave a few links in our show notes of any books or resources that are your favourites. Do you have any books or other podcasts or anything like that you'd like to recommend to people out there?
There's a couple. There's a book for all leaders out there. One of the books I came across, I read overseas actually. It was a guy called Rob Chapman, and it's called Everybody Matters. And he's a CEO of a business called Barry Waymiller, American firm. And it was just totally changed my perspective on leadership and the role we have as leaders with people we work with. So it's a worthwhile read. Like all those books, probably the first third's good, the rest you probably don't necessarily need. But it's a good read. There's also one we use, Measuring What Matters, for all leaders trying to instigate change and trying to bring different people together. It's a book called John Doerr. It's around the OKR measurement tool, Measuring What Matters. A lot of big companies do it. And for that issue I mentioned before about diverse people, that's a really good book as well. So those two probably my recommendations. And podcasts, apart from Elite Agent, of course, there's there's an HBR podcast that's done every week by a guy called Mahir Desai, and a couple other guys as well, Ravi Abdalal, and that's called After Hours. It's an HBR podcast weekly. It's quite quick and very topical, monthly, very topical global issues from pretty smart people.
We'll definitely check that one out.
Yeah.
So Dan, I'd like to thank you for spending some time with us today. It's been wonderful to hear about some of your leadership journey, and some of the advice that you've given has been incredibly generous. So thank you very much for that. Just a final question I ask all my guests is out of all the stuff that we've talked about today, is there one tip or one thing that you'd like to leave everyone with, or one thought?
Well, I thought one thing is that it's for people in family businesses, it is, you're very lucky to be in a family business. I know there are issues with family businesses, but it is a powerful thing to have family together, and you understand it more and more as your career develops. And I'd recommend that anyone in family business to work on it as a family, to keep talking, keep communicating. And, great things do come from it if you stick together. Absolutely amazing. Dan White, thank you so much. Thanks, Samantha.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Elevate podcast, with thanks to connectnow.com.au. Don't forget to get access to all of Elite Agent's premium resources, including a detailed episode guide for this podcast. Visit joineliteagent.com.